Good to see everybody. Welcome to Unity of Phoenix. My name is Richard Maraj. I'm the senior minister here, and it's a joy and a blessing to be with you all today. It's great to see you. We have a wonderful, wonderful service. It's beginning a 3-week series on Brene Brown's book, Rising Strong Today. So we have a great service prepared for you, as well as a first-time soloist that will just rock you. So welcome, everyone. Great to see you.
Everybody needs to be rocked. I like that. My name is Jimmy Scott. I serve as pastoral care minister at Unity of Phoenix. My pleasure to welcome you here as well. This morning we're going to be talking about what is unity. And unity, essentially in a nutshell, is a interdenominational worldwide ministry that currently is operating in something like 26 countries. And our primary focus is on positive, practical Christianity. So that's it in a nutshell.
Amen.
And now Kehlani will lead us in our meditational song. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I invite you to take just a few moments now to metaphorically step away from the outside world and turn inwardly. Get comfortable in your seat. Make a conscious choice to slow your mind down. Let's take a deep, refreshing breath. Just relax. In the scriptures, we are reminded that it is a quiet mind that enables us to essentially connect to the quietness of the whole Spirit of God. And able to, in order to reach that quietness, it simply requires that we relax and let go. So for the next few moments, I invite you to be still. Today we give thanks for all the blessings that touch our lives and the lives of all whom we love. We give thanks for the Spirit of God that lives and breathes and has its being in each one of us. For all the gifts that come our way and all the people we meet and all the people we bless and are blessed by. And so it is. And amen.
All right. Good morning again, everyone. Good to see you again, and a shout out to everybody who tunes in and watches us online. So this big city lawyer goes duck hunting in the countryside in Texas, and he shoots down and drops a bird, but it falls into this farmer's field on the other side of a fence, and as the lawyer is climbing over the fence, the farmer drives up and says to the lawyer, "Hey, so what are you doing?" And the lawyer says, "Hey, well, I shot a duck, and it fell into the field. Now I'm just going to retrieve it." And the old farmer says, "This is my property, and you're not coming over here." And indignant, the lawyer says, "I am one of the best trial attorneys around. If you don't let me come over, I will sue you and take everything you've got, you old coot." And the old farmer just smiles to himself. He says, "Apparently, young man, you don't know how things are done in these parts. We settle small disagreements like this with what we call the three-kick rule." And he said, "So what's the three-kick rule?" He says, "Well, first I kick you 3 times, then you kick me 3 times, and we go back and forth and so on until someone gives up, and then they'll be the one that gets the duck." The lawyer thinks about it and about this contract, this proposed thing. And he thinks, "I can easily take this old guy." So he agrees to it. So the old farmer climbs down the tractor really slowly, then walks his way over to the city fella, and then he winds up and he kicks him with the point of his toe right in his belly, and he knocks him flat on his knees. And then on the second kick, he kicks him so hard he almost knocks the nose off of his face, and he's flat on his belly. And with his third kick, he kicks him right in the ribs to the point he winces and almost gives up on the spot. But his will makes him just hang in there, and he gets up to his feet, and in pain, he says, "Okay, now my turn." And the old farmer smiles and says, "Nah, I give up. You can keep the duck." So, all right. So how many people here have ever felt beat up, mistreated, or taken advantage of in a situation? Anybody ever felt like that? And so how many people here have ever been knocked down so hard by life that you weren't quite sure if or how you're going to get back up? Anybody ever feel like that? You know, the fact is every one of us at some point in life will fall. At some point in life, we'll get a little bit beat up. At some point, we'll get our butts kicked. We'll mess up so badly. We'll suffer disappointment, hurt, and heartache. And it happens to every single one of us. And the key question is, how do we rise again? How do we get back up? How do we live through the struggle? How do we show up when life is painful and difficult? How many people have read any of this stuff by Brené Brown? Anybody read some of Brené Brown's books? You know, she wrote The Gift of Imperfection and Daring Greatly. And one of the poems that really inspired her to write the book Daring Greatly really comes from a speech given in 1910 by Theodore Roosevelt called Man in the Arena. And some of you probably know it, and I just want to read it to you because I just find it so inspiring. It says, "It is not the critic that counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of the deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually does strive to do the deeds, who at best in the end knows either the high triumph of achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly." I love that quote, and I love her books because her books are really a call to arms for every one of us to have courage, to show up in our lives with more courage, to have the courage to be true to ourselves, to have the courage to live an authentic life, to have the courage to be fully engaged in what we're doing, even if it means risking failing, even if it means risking getting hurt, even if it means risking heartache and disappointment. And why is living with courage and living wholeheartedly so important? Because she says to live the other way, to live in fear, to live by holding back or pretending or denying or armoring ourselves against hurt will literally kill us. It will kill our spirits, it will kill our hopes, it will kill our joy, it'll kill our creativity, it'll kill our passion, it'll kill our peace of mind and our happiness. You know, Jesus said he came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. And I love that it says it came that we may have life more abundantly. And the truth is, the thing that decides whether we live abundantly is directly related to how much courage we are willing to have, how daring we are willing to live, how authentically, how vulnerable we are willing to be, how much we are willing to risk and try and open ourselves to new possibilities. And sometimes when we're being as brave and bold and living as fully, sometimes we will still fall. Sometimes we will still fail. Sometimes we will still get hurt. And the question is it worth it? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because if we want to experience more love, more fulfillment, more joy, more happiness, and to live more abundantly, we have to be willing to dare greatly. We have to have the courage to risk and try and reach out. You know, it'd be fabulous if we all lived such perfect lives that we made the right decision all the time. Things always worked out well. We were flawless in all our decision making and thinking, but that's not how life works. The reality is that the process of life, the process of growth, the process of transformation all requires challenge, all requires us moving through and going deeper into ourselves and learning how to rise strong again. It is the process of getting back up again that teaches us who we are, that helps us discover our strength, our faith, and the great gifts that are within each and every one of us. And the fact is, it's a process. It takes time. It doesn't happen instantaneously. How many people have heard of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey? And it is a process, and it's a three-part process. The first one, the hero's journey, is the departure, where the hero is called out of the world he knows to some adventure. The second is the initiation, where he enters the unknown and has a challenge that is so difficult, but it takes everything he's got to overcome it. And the third is when he returns, transformed, changed in a great way that not only helps him live a better life, but helps him help the people in his community live a better life. To rise strong means to get back up from whatever difficulty, fall, failure, or suffering you're going through in a way that brings forth more wisdom and that helps you live your life more wholeheartedly. Today we were going to start a 4-week series on Brené Brown's book, Rising Strong, but I decided we're going to start a 3-week series on Brené Brown's book because I couldn't think of a fourth thing to say. It's just a fact. I hadn't read the book before I came up with the title, so here we go. So the 3 phases of rising strong are the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. Walking into your story, owning your story, then rewriting a new ending to your story. Joseph Campbell says, the big question in your life is whether you are going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure. Are you ready to live your life with courage? Are you ready to take a step to live your life more wholeheartedly? And if you are, the first step is the reckoning, walking into your story. Now, the word reckoning means to make an account. And reckoning has 2 simple steps. Number 1 is to recognize and acknowledge what you're feeling. And number 2 is get curious about the story behind your feelings. Engage in your feeling, acknowledge what you're feeling, and then open a space to learn about the connection between your feelings and your thoughts and your behaviors. And the fact is, when we're all face down in whatever arena, whether it's a relationship or professional or family life, the first step is just to recognize and acknowledge what you're feeling. To acknowledge that you're hurt, or you're disappointed, or you're devastated, or you're sad. And actually, you don't even have to get that specific. You can just acknowledge to yourself that I think my button has been pressed. You know, something inside me has been triggered, or I just feel overwhelmed. You know, just simply acknowledging to yourself, I feel sad, I feel disappointed, I feel brokenhearted, or something's going on, or I just feel like crying, or I just want to eat Oreo cookies and lots of them. It's acknowledged that some emotion has been triggered in you. Something isn't feeling good and right. And just to acknowledge it's an important thing. And that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But when you look at how we really behave in life, the fact is, when we have failures and disappointment, it hurts and it doesn't feel good. And most of us don't like to acknowledge it because it forces us, to acknowledge pain and to be vulnerable. It humbles ourselves. And sometimes we're humiliated and we don't like acknowledging it. The opposite of the word recognize our emotion, the opposite is to deny our emotions. And most of us tend to deny our emotions. And we think denying it's going to help us. If I deny it, it won't bother me or hurt me. But when you deny or shove away emotions, they fester and grow in us. They stay with us subconsciously and end up sabotaging our own happiness. And it creates behaviors in us that are totally out of alignment with the person we want to be. And it creates thoughts and beliefs that literally undermine the success of our relationships, of our getting closer, connected, and being more successful in our work. We would rather, in spite of knowing that denying all of our thoughts, how many people know that stuffing your feelings doesn't help? It hurts. And yet, we still practice it. Anybody ever say something that hurts you and your first response is, no, I'm okay, I'm fine. That didn't bother me at all, what you said. I don't care what they said. We still go into that pretending because we want to show that we're okay. We want to show that we're whole. We want to show that we're strong. In our culture, we have this thing where we really diminish and devalue feelings. Like we're kind of emotionally phobic because we think things like, crying are for weaklings or babies. Don't be so emotional. And so we end up just pushing them and stuffing them and don't let ourselves not only not feel the hurt or the pain or the disappointment, sometimes we even stop ourselves from feeling love. I've always had this theory that most people don't want to feel what's going on in their lives, so the only time we give ourselves permission is when we go to movies and we cry at what's going on the screen with other people. Does that make sense? That sometimes we don't want to own our own feelings, we want to stuff them, and the only time we give permission is by vicariously crying or feeling emotions. And no matter what vicarious emotion you feel, it'll never teach you about yourself, and it'll never heal what's really going on inside of you. Another challenge about emotions is that we got a built-in fight or flight response. You either fight and duke it out, or we run. And sometimes we would just rather run, thinking it's going to protect ourselves. And so here's another example. Instead of saying something simple like, I failed, and I just feel really bad and disappointed about it, we go to the extreme and say, I'm a failure. I want you to know there's a difference. One was acknowledging something happened and I felt bad. I failed and I feel bad. The other one goes to a judgment. I'm a failure and a loser. And if you notice, we do that, there's no recognition of emotion at all. It is one of the techniques we use to avoid feeling. We've got all kinds of them. We let it build up and stuff it until we explode, or we blame and project it onto other people, or we numb out, or we stay busy, or cover it up with alcohol or sex or gambling or TV or whatever it is. And the truth of the reality is, if we don't walk into our story and own it and acknowledge our own pain and work through it, that it will end up controlling us. If we deny it, pretend, and run from it, it will undermine us. Most of us, we have three ways which emotions show up in us and we can recognize. The first one's in our body, like our heart starts to race quick, or you get knots in your stomach or tightness in your chest. How many people sometimes recognize difficult emotions in your body? Anybody ever notice that? So that's one place for us to just look and start being aware. The second one's in our thoughts. When your thoughts race so much, you just can't stop yourself from thinking. And then the third one is in kind of inappropriate behaviors, like, just spontaneously yelling at someone or firing off a really mean email to somebody. There are all kinds of different ways that we can express those things. And so what we need to begin to do is just recognize our emotions when we're not feeling great. Like for me, I have a practice of journaling. And what I do is I journal and I write down, I felt really hurt about when so-and-so said this. Or I felt really disappointed or diminished. Or I feel really scared in this particular situation. And what I find interestingly is when I just acknowledge the simple little things that happen in my life that throw me off, I'm liberated and I feel lighter. By not running away from it and just acknowledging it, it's amazing how much more peace I feel, how more clear I am. My brother calls it de-sludging, just getting rid of the junk by just writing it down. And I'll tell you, folks, don't minimize or diminish or devalue the little feelings you get of hurt or disappointment and just how powerful it is just to acknowledge it for yourself. I want to share, there's a huge difference between dwelling. Sometimes New Thought people are so positive, they want to not acknowledge anything. But there's a huge difference between dwelling on something and denying it, because both are unhealthy. You can't just get stuck and think about it all day, but you can't pretend it isn't there. The healthiest ground is in the middle, where you just acknowledge that you're feeling hurt or sad. And sometimes there are things from months ago that are still there, and I'll still write it down. I'm still feeling a bit of regret about this, or I still want to punch that person in the face. Just spiritually, I don't literally want to do that. And of course, this is for our own eyes only. It's our own inner process. So my question for you, is there something that someone said to you or did this week that is still bothering you and you haven't allowed yourself to acknowledge your disappointment or your hurt or your pain? Is there something that happened years ago that you haven't fully owned and walked in to what's really going on? We always want to say, I want a great life. I want my life to get so much better. Well, guess what? It starts right here. And usually with the pain that is clogging and blocking up our level of peace and happiness. So my question for you is, are you willing to say yes to your adventure? Are you willing to walk into your story and to just name and acknowledge the feelings and emotions that don't feel so good inside of you? The second step is to get curious. Is to get curious about what's really going on. To get curious about the story behind the feelings and how the feelings affect our thoughts and our behaviors. And all that means is just to open up a little line of inquiry to find out what's really going on. And you don't need to know the exact answer. You just have to be willing to ask the question and be willing to learn a little bit more. Like just saying, why am I being so hard on the people around me today? What set me off? How did I get to the point that I want to punch this wall? Why can't I stop thinking about that conversation that happened at work? Why is it going on in my head still? And I know Oreo cookies won't do it, so what's really going on behind, beneath the Oreos? Here's an example, so let's say you get some news at work and your face turns red and your heart races and, the boss has given the lead to this project to one of your colleagues and you really wanted it. Rising strong would require that you acknowledge your feelings, but you get curious about what's really going on. So you would say something like, I am so mad that my boss gave the lead to Todd, and I need to figure out what's going on inside of me before I go off on one of those team members. Now, that sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? But here is how we usually respond to that, by avoiding and offloading and not dealing with the hurt. We'd say something like, my boss is a jerk, Todd is a brown-noser, who really cares? This job sucks and this company is a joke. Anyone relate to that? Okay. And this sounds silly, but if you analyze it, the difference is that the second one had no acknowledgement of emotion, and there was no curiosity about what was really going on. And when we do, we just keep that energy stuck in us. But simply saying, I was really disappointed that Todd got it, and I got to figure out what's really going on inside of me, will absolutely liberate you and help you rise above that challenge to greater peace. You know, the opposite of the word curiosity is being disengaged. And when you are disengaged in your life and disconnected, you cannot feel a sense of joy and peace and fulfillment. You know, the word integrate, what it means to make whole. And if you want to live a wholehearted life, an abundant life, guess what? You need to accept everything, including the challenges and the pain and the difficulty and the frustrations. You've got to embrace them and welcome them all. You can't disown some of you and then pretend everything's good, because you'll never feel a sense of wholeness till you integrate everything. And curiosity is the door that opens up to healing. You know, the word curiosity, it evokes things like just possibilities, and opening yourself to insight and being willing and being flexible to new ideas, being willing to learn. Do you know, they say, studies show that when you're curious, that it changes your brain chemistry, and you're more likely to learn and you're more likely to retain information when your brain is curious. They did a study on the greatest geniuses of all time. Leonardo da Vinci was number one by far. And the number one quality they say he expressed that made him a genius was he was curious. He always wondered, what's a new way to do this? I wonder what else we can think. He opened his mind. And with your emotion, just opening your mind to be curious of what's really going on with you will literally begin to change and transform your life. So here are the three things we can do with the reckoning. Number one, set an intention. Are you willing to set an intention that you, on a daily basis, will recognize and acknowledge the emotions that are going on in you? And will you, on a daily basis, set an intention to just get curious, to learn, to discover what's really going on so you can be healthier? Set an intention. The second one is to give yourself permission. Brene Brown tells a story when she was meeting Oprah. She was so scared because, you know, Oprah is Oprah. And she was meeting Oprah, and she wrote a permission slip to herself that said, permission to be excited, have fun, and be goofy. And she allowed herself, she gave herself permission to go have fun. And it sounds funny, but the reason most of us don't feel peace of mind or forgive is we don't give ourselves permission. And she says, write it down. I give myself permission to be honest with myself about what I'm feeling. I mean, isn't that a simple thing? I give myself permission to be honest. Or I give myself permission to pay attention to my body and my thoughts and my actions to really see what emotions are really going on with me. Or I give myself permission to ask myself 3 times a day, what am I really feeling? What's going on inside of me? And then the third one is to be curious, to have the desire to learn, to have the desire to discover what's really going on inside of you, and to find out how it's connected and what you've got to learn from the situation. You know, it's not easy walking into our hurt, walking into those dark places, but it's really important. How many people remember the movie The Empire Strikes Back? It was a long time ago. But there's a scene in there, a very pivotal scene, where Yoda is teaching Luke Skywalker how to be a Jedi warrior. And he's teaching him, you know, how to use the Force and how the dark side, aggression, fear, and anger can consume you if you don't learn how to be centered and calm. And so he's teaching him this, and they're just outside this, in the dark, in this dark swamp. And he looks over, Luke does, and he sees a cave. And he says, something's kind of weird there. What's going on? It looks kind of dangerous. And Yoda says to him, in you must go. And Luke says, so what's in there? And Yoda says, only what you take with you. So he goes into this dark thing, and there are vines everywhere, and there are, snakes and reptiles. And then he comes face to face with his arch enemy, Darth Vader. And they take out their lightsabers, and he swings, and he cuts off Darth Vader's head, and it rolls on the ground, and then his mask pops off, and it's Darth Vader's face. But when he looks closer, it wasn't Darth Vader's face. It was his own face. He was standing there looking at his own face. And walking into our stories can be just as frightening and foreboding as walking into Yoda's swamp. And the cool thing is when you walk in, ultimately what you end up confronting is yourself. The most difficult part of our stories is what we bring to them, is the stories we tell about who we are, how unworthy we are, what's wrong with us. That is the most difficult thing. As much as the breakup might hurt, as much as some disappointment or heartache, what's more painful is what we tell ourselves, is how we react and how we show up in those situations. So whatever it is that's going on in your life, some feeling you haven't dealt with, in you must go. That if you want to heal, it is to go through the feeling, not around it or not avoid it. In you must go. The fact is, are you willing to say yes to the great adventure? Because the great adventure of living your life courageously and living it more abundantly and more wholeheartedly starts right here. By being willing to recognize and acknowledge your feelings, just to recognize them and get curious about what's really going on. And when you do, I guarantee you, it'll begin to liberate you in amazing and wonderful ways. Our lives can get better if you're willing to reckon with your emotions and get curious, because that is the first step in rising strong. God bless you all.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is.
Great job, kids. Let's cheer for our kids one more time. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful week, and go Cardinals!